Today we're going to be learning about the largest cities in Southwest Florida. We're going to go from Bradenton, Sarasota, Fort Myers, Naples, Cape Coral, and everything in between, explaining to you all of the options you have when moving to Southwest Florida, what makes every city unique, what are the good and the bad things about all these cities. So whether you're thinking about moving to Southwest Florida or you're just curious about the area in general, today's video will be perfect for you. There's a lot of reasons to love Southwest Florida, from its beautiful beaches, warm weather, cities known for safety with vibrant downtowns. This area really has a lot to offer, and if you're moving and you don't consider Southwest Florida as an option, you're making a huge mistake, because this area really has a lot to offer. There's a reason why so many cities in Southwest Florida are among the fastest growing in the United States. On today's video, we're going to find out why. We're going to start off today's video on the north side and work our way southbound. The northernmost city we're going to be considering is Bradenton, Florida. Bradenton, Florida is known for Anna Maria Island and has the clearest waters of anywhere in Southwest Florida. There's 55,000 people within city limits, but the metropolitan area is home to over 400,000 people. There's 8,500 people of Asian background, and when you look at the Hispanic population, over 71,000, which makes Bradenton a fairly diverse city. Add to that tourism from all over the world, thanks to Tampa International Airport and the reputation that these beaches have, means that there's always a constant influx of people here from all over the country and the world. Living in Bradenton will give you access to some of the most beautiful beaches in Florida, as well as tropical warm weather vibes. The city is vibrant during spring break, but it doesn't get too crazy, and it has enough snowbirds to have an interesting change during the winter, but it's not as hectic as Naples and Fort Myers. Without a doubt, the biggest benefit of living in Bradenton, Florida is that you have easy access to some of the best beaches in the state, and there's almost no place where you're going to be paying for parking. It's free beach parking, and there's plenty of parking available. Downtown Bradenton has a lot of Irish pubs. It has a lot of oak trees. It almost mirrors some of the cities in North Carolina with its downtown, having kind of more of an American historical vibe. It's a very quaint downtown. You'll enjoy shaded areas if you're walking, a beautiful waterfront overlooking the Manatee River. If you like a quieter downtown, walkable with lots of bars and pubs, you'll like Bradenton, Florida. When it comes to crime, Bradenton, Florida seriously has a problem, specifically the inner city neighborhoods like Oneiko, Samoset, Palmetto, Memphis. These impoverished inner city areas have been dealing with lack of investment from their community, mismanagement on a county and city level. Homelessness and addiction are rampant, and these are areas you possibly would want to stay out of if you can afford something better. Many people who live in Bradenton tell me that local government here is a complete clown show. Their incompetence is visible by the condition of the community. If you stretch the budget into the 400,000s, you can end up in Lakewood Ranch, one of the best planned communities in the state of Florida. While most of the fast and growing areas in Florida are dealing with traffic congestion, Lakewood Ranch built the roads first and the community later, which means that it actually has more road capacity than traffic, being a rare exception in the state of Florida. While living in Lakewood Ranch is expensive, it offers you easy access to 75. Along the Gulf Coast of Bradenton, you have Anna Maria Island, said to be some of the best beaches in Florida. Being here will offer you access to incredible beaches. The island is popular, but it doesn't get overly congested. Only during peak hours when people enter or leave the beaches does traffic become somewhat of an annoyance. Being in Manatee County, you would guess that manatee sightings are common here. This area combines the clear waters of the Florida Panhandle with the tropical vibes of South Florida and gives you something of a mix in the middle. Buying a property on Anna Maria Island will start you off at about $1 million, which is significantly more affordable than other places in Southwest Florida, despite the fact you're getting a beautiful, charming tropical island. If you're looking for a more spacious home on the island, push it towards $3 million. That is still a significant deal compared to, let's say, Naples or somewhere around Fort Myers. The Bradenton area in general has escaped hurricanes for many years with nothing more than winds and perhaps some localized flooding. It hasn't been hit directly by a massive hurricane. Right next to Bradenton is Sarasota. The city limits have 55,000 people and the county has 465,000 people. Living in Sarasota will offer you an elegant city with Siesta Key, some of the most famous beaches in the entire state of Florida. If you enjoy arts, events, as well as living in a very nice, elegant, fast-growing area, half of Lakewood Ranch sits in Sarasota and the other half sits in Bradenton. And as you push towards the coast, you have Longboat Key, Siesta Key, Lido Key, some of the most beautiful beach areas Florida has to offer. Sarasota is generally known as a place for fine arts, fine dining, and entertainment. You'll not have a boring evening if you decide to move to Sarasota. If you want to keep your schedule full of things to do, Sarasota will not disappoint. From shopping to dining to nature activities, Sarasota is clearly one of the best cities in Florida, and that is why this area continues to grow. One of the benefits that Sarasota has is that it's a big city that has everything. In fact, in Southwest Florida, it would be the most urbanized city with the largest downtown and skyline. But despite being urbanized and modern, it's not a giant metroplex like Miami, Tampa, Orlando. It offers you everything you need, but it still has a hometown feel. Despite being a larger city, more congested, particularly during the winter when snowbirds come down, Sarasota still doesn't lose that coastal beach town feel. It's almost like the perfect city where you get the best of both worlds. Not too big, not too small. You'll definitely feel privileged to live in Sarasota, Florida. Downtown Sarasota is renowned for the arts and entertainment. There's always something going on in the city. Events, charity, arts. This city has a lot to offer. Entertainment here is not a problem. Look at Sarasota as somewhat of a baby Miami or a Coral Gables, where you get this elegant vibe, but at the same time, it's not this gigantic city. My wife said if I showed you guys her business card, there would be some type of rewards involved for me. Here's her information. Sarasota will offer you that big city vibe that people like in cities like Miami or West Palm Beach, but at the same time, it's manageable because of the size of the city. You don't have to be stuck in hours, and that's a great thing. People want that big Florida city vibe, but they don't want to be stuck in traffic for the rest of their lives in Miami. And Sarasota is somewhat of a nice compromise where you get some of that Florida big city vibe, but you don't get all the traffic and congestion. I mean, it's not a perfect city for traffic. On a busy day, you can take an hour to go from one side of the city to the other, but that's still relatively good compared to, let's say, Orlando or Miami. So if you've been thinking about a big city in Florida but are a little concerned about the traffic and congestion, consider looking into Sarasota. Overall, Sarasota is a fairly safe city. You don't have to worry if you're going out at night. There are some parts of the city, like north of downtown, that are a little bit more active. If you go out at night after dark, you might see a bar fight or two in a few areas. Nothing more than that. Homelessness is visible, but it's not appalling or completely out of control. It's just a present element. Overall, the only area of Sarasota where I have had issues with safety is off of Washington, north of downtown. But this area is starting to gentrify. If you stay on the main roads, you're not going to have any problems. If you get out late at night in some of those restaurants and bars in Sarasota or gas stations, you would use normal precautions and normal common sense. It's definitely a rich and affluent city, but every once in a while you might see people arguing or people who've had a little bit too much to drink. But that's about it. Overall, Sarasota is a fairly safe city, and the homicide rate for Sarasota County is fairly low. So in general, it's definitely a safe city. Like anywhere else, a city this size, you're going to have little areas that are a little bit rough. but it's never enough where it's going to prevent you from going out at night and having a good time. The city's walkable even after dark. Like anywhere else, you're going to have a little bit of a crime concern, but this should never prevent you from enjoying Sarasota. Overall, it's a fairly safe city. Of course, being a large urban area, you're going to have the common issues, a few bad neighborhoods, homelessness here or there, people panhandling. That's about every city now, but overall, the crime rates are fairly low, and most of the city is clean, elegant. You have suburbs like Lakewood Ranch, Venice, Northport that are fast-growing suburban areas. So if you're a little bit more concerned with safety, you can always end up in a gated community somewhere in the outskirts and not in the urban core. You also have an Amish community. Now, on my videos, people are telling me these are not Amish, they're Mennonites. We have both. We have Amish and Mennonites, but we do have an Amish community in Sarasota. It is mostly a snowbird community. They're not your traditional, extraordinarily conservative Amish, and I think that's what trips up a lot of people. They think the Amish have to be riding horse buggies. These are Florida Amish people. They're a little bit more, they're like the Florida version of Amish people, so they're not going to be like as conservative as in other parts of the country. They're snowbirding. They're enjoying things that they're probably not supposed to in other places. But it is, in fact, an Amish community. In the comment section, there's always somebody arguing that the Amish would never drive an electric bicycle, that they'd have to... Shut up. You don't understand how Florida works. Yes, we have Amish people. No, they're not extremely conservative. One of the best things about Sarasota, of course, is going to be access to some of the best beaches in the United States. Just south of Sarasota, in Sarasota County, is the small town of Venice. Just about 25,000 people live here. It's somewhat of a smaller version of Naples, if you can wrap your head around that. It's mostly a white area. It's not as diverse as some of these other cities. It has a charming, beautiful downtown. The city of Venice really is elegant, as the name would suggest. It's got a beautiful downtown lined with palm trees, small little restaurants. One of my favorite places to eat here is a little French restaurant. After Hurricane Ian destroyed Southwest Florida, Venice actually was mostly spared. We were coming up here and we enjoyed Venezuelan and French cuisine in downtown Venice because everything was closed down in the Fort Myers area. So I got to be really familiar with Venice since after the hurricane, it was one of the few towns that got spared. And we needed, our little fix of civilization after the hurricane. So we would come up here and kind of enjoy and explore the city. And it really has a lot to offer. It's a beautiful, charming city. It's not as big as Sarasota or Naples. It really feels a lot more small. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have a lot to offer. I think for the size of Venice, its downtown is fairly impressive. The vibes are perfect. It really has a tropical and elegant vibe. A great city to go out for a walk in the evenings. Many places in Southwest Florida have just got too big for their own good. But Venice really is like an odd exception. It really feels like what Florida towns used to many years ago. Overall, Venice is a very safe city, but I have noticed that for some reason I don't understand. There's a lot of road rage and people can be somewhat conflictive, especially while driving. So while it is a fairly safe city, while you're driving through the city, you're going to notice that people are somewhat aggressive and hostile. It's not perfect. The youth here seems like they're getting into a lot of trouble. And again, I don't really understand why that's the case because it's overall a safe town, but it seems like the youth here is always up to something bad. Perhaps there just isn't enough to do for adolescents in this city, and that leads them to get into trouble. But clearly the biggest downside of Venice is how badly it's been affected by the red tide. If you're not familiar with the red tide, it makes you sick. It kills off all the fish. For some reason, the Venice area has suffered with the red tide more than anywhere in Southwest Florida, I believe. When the red tide comes along, Venice always has it for prolonged periods. Also, the sand in Venice is not white. It's almost like a gray sand. You probably can't even walk barefoot on it on a hot summer day. Possibly that sand makes the water get hotter and that causes the red tide. I'm not really sure how it works, but the sand quality is really not that great. So when it comes to beaches, there is a beautiful fishing pier and the coastline is beautiful, but the actual beach itself is probably one of the poorest rated in Southwest Florida. Venice still feels like a beach town, but just understand that the sand, the water clarity, and the beaches in general just aren't compared to Naples or Sarasota. Now, the outskirts of Venice have been growing tremendously. Anything in Sarasota County is going to have a lot of new home construction, entire communities. A lot of investment is going into Sarasota County, so Venice is benefiting from that greatly. And if you're looking for hurricane protection, overall, Venice hasn't had too much trouble. It gets a little bit of wind, it gets some tree damage, it gets a little bit of storm surge, but Venice has really escaped the worst of Florida hurricanes, other than the fact that the aftermath of the red tide is always really bad here. Might have something to do with the sand quality and the water temperature. Northport, Florida, with 75,000 people, is also in Sarasota County. The growth of this area has been tremendous. And the best part, it's not just single family homes. We've seen restaurants, shopping plazas. Overall, Northport is a very safe city. And if you're looking for single family home construction, the prices for single family homes here are very reasonable. And you're still in Sarasota County, so that gives this area a lot of potential for growth. People want to be in Sarasota County and they want to have affordable housing. Crime here really isn't that much of a concern. Hurricanes definitely are, though. One of the biggest downsides of Northport is how propense this area has been to hurricanes. Several hurricanes have affected the area, and Hurricane Ian just about destroyed the area with incredible storm surge flooding, as well as river flooding, as well as incredible wind. It's really got a little bit of everything when it comes to hurricane damage. So everything great about Northport would be that it's affordable and it's not that bad of crime. Yes, you have some car racing scene. Yes, you have some juvenile delinquency, but it's nothing on par with the big cities. It's definitely safe. Another definite downside of Northport is that it doesn't have a downtown. So going out in Northport might just mean going to the gas station, the Circle K, or the Wawa. You could head on over to Englewood or Venice. These other adjacent towns have charming downtowns, but Northport itself really does not have what you would call, say, per se, a downtown. So that's definitely one of the downsides of Northport. It's mostly just commercial areas, restaurants, things to do. But if you want a real downtown, you're going to have to go to some other city. The same thing can be said about beaches. Northport doesn't really have beaches, and the coastline here is probably the worst rated of Southwest Florida. It's a coastline, but it's not an impressive coastline. The sand quality there isn't there. The water quality isn't either. It's an area prone to red tide as well. So as far as beaches go, you're traveling into Sarasota. Immediately in the Northport area, there really isn't great beaches. So no downtown, no beaches. Why is Northport growing so fast? I think it's because there's a lot of land available. There's a grid pattern, which means that for single family home construction, there's plenty of land available, and that has created an area of affordability in home construction, especially single family home. Now, at first there was a lot of single family home construction, but it's starting to catch up on the commercial side. Thus, it's giving you a nice balance of an area that's growing, but it's starting to little by little offer more. Northport is a relaxing rural feel type of place in a lot of areas that are underdeveloped still. There's a long way to go before Northport starts to feel like a congested city. Many people just want that rural feel, and Northport will offer it to you. Large developers have taken up most of the land in Sarasota and Manatee County, so the fact that there's an open grid pattern in Northport, it's really provided a lot of opportunity for people into single family home construction, because this type of available and affordable land simply doesn't exist anywhere north of here. Thus, you can live in Northport, get affordable housing, affordable land, and be able to commute into Tampa, Sarasota, Bradenton, and not have to live in a congested area. All that has made Northport grow simply because single family home construction here is more affordable. If you're looking for a plot of land to build a house in Sarasota or Bradenton, you're simply not going to find it. Northport has been a place where single family home construction has been able to take place because of the vastness of this city. Developers really have a show code in Sarasota and Manatee County, whereas if they had rezoned areas from agriculture to single family home plots, then you would have more of this type of growth in the Sarasota and Bradenton area. But only developers have been able to switch area from agriculture to large developments. There hasn't been rezoning to create single family home plots in those counties. Thus, Northport has benefited from the fact that if you're building a single family home, there's nowhere else to build it north of here. Sure, they're letting developers rezone agricultural lands for their uses, but they're not letting the average Joe like me and you do it, which is in turn create a situation where now housing in the Sarasota and Bradenton area is extraordinarily overpriced because all the new construction is gated communities, and that's why Northport's been able to grow. It should have really been growth that would have taken place in other places, but developers have a show code on that with the assistance of the local counties. Port Charlotte in Charlotte County, about 61,000 people live here. The name Northport comes from Port Charlotte. There's not really a downtown in Port Charlotte. They're just done now with building this thing called the Sunseekers Resort, which is kind of the first thing where downtown Port Charlotte in theory would be. If you want a downtown, really, you have to go to Punta Gorda on the south side of the river. So Port Charlotte is kind of an older and decrepit city. It used to be just older retired people, but there's starting to be a lot of Haitians and Spanish people moving into this area. Crime is mostly along US 41. Charlotte County is a relatively safe county. There really isn't that much of a crime concern here, with the exception of the older, more decrepit neighborhoods in those areas. And along US 41, you have a little bit of homelessness, addiction, stuff like that, but nothing crazy. But Port Charlotte is definitely changing. It's no longer elderly people retiring. It's kind of people who can't afford South Florida now. Beaches. Again, there aren't really beaches in this part of Florida. Sure, you can take a good drive over to Boca Grande, but in general, all you get is the Peace River, so there aren't really beaches here, and that's definitely a downside. Port Charlotte has a lot of affordability, but it doesn't have a downtown. It has a lot of older, decrepit neighborhoods that are run down, and on top of that, some of those older neighborhoods don't really stand up very well to the biggest test of Florida, which is hurricanes. Older houses and older neighborhoods definitely do not combine very good with hurricanes. And if you're buying a new construction in the Port Charlotte area, you might do okay, but if you buy an old mobile home or a house from the 50s or 60s or 70s, hopefully if you're moving to this area, you can find one of the few gated communities or new construction, because old houses and hurricanes don't mix very well, and they don't appreciate either. Punta Gorda, 20,000 people. South of the Peace River, you have this little place called Punta Gorda. It actually has a downtown. It's a charming and historical downtown surrounded by historic neighborhoods, but there's also been a lot of development in their downtown. Overall, new home construction here is somewhat expensive. There is a downtown and a city feel, which a lot of these places in Florida don't have. You also have a lot of canals and water access, and just about most of the construction here is new home construction with somewhat stricter building codes. So you have a lot of good structure to the city of Punta Gorda, and that makes it more expensive. It also makes the town more resilient when it's facing hurricanes. So Punta Gorda has a lot to offer. Downtown Punta Gorda is small and compact, but it is charming and quaint with bars, grills, restaurants. It really does have a very clean, refreshing downtown. When it comes to crime, Punta Gorda used to be called the safest city in America, but that was before, when Punta Gorda was mostly elderly people retiring. Most of the city core is safe. It still continues to be a very safe city, and Charlotte County is a safe county overall. But once you get outside of Punta Gorda into unincorporated neighborhoods, I'm going to be honest, there are some bad areas. These are mostly rural or suburban areas outside of Punta Gorda. So while the city itself is known as a safe place, once you get outside of the city limits into areas that are kind of more underdeveloped or rural, crime is definitely a problem. Punta Gorda is known as a safe city, but I'll tell you, it's starting to change. Homelessness is starting to creep in. Still, the town remains a safe, clean city, great place to retire, but if you're buying a house within the city limits, it's not the same as buying a little place on the outskirts. Hurricanes have definitely left a mark in Punta Gorda, and Punta Gorda has in turn have stricter building codes, which means that the city is resilient. So despite the fact that Punta Gorda has had some of the worst hurricane impacts of anywhere in Southwest Florida, they're aware of it. Their building codes are strict, the high elevation, the wind zones, which means despite the fact the city is an absolute magnet for the worst hurricanes, the structures are able to withstand it. The city is able to rebuild. They understand what they're facing and they build accordingly, and thus the buyers have trust. They know that it's a city that's been tested. We know what to expect of hurricanes. We know how the rebuilding process works. There's no real mystery here. We know it's a magnet for hurricanes, but we also know that the city has the ability to recover. Just don't confuse the analytics of the city limits with the general area. Yes, the city limits are great, but the general area doesn't really reflect that. Cape Coral, Florida, with 220,000 people, is the largest city in Southwest Florida by population. It used to be a grid pattern that got filled in, and currently Cape Coral is a city. It's not unincorporated, and thus it's been able to grow. You do have to pay a toll to cross the bridge, and you also have ridiculously high property taxes. Cape Coral has a large New Yorker population, and it has a large population of people from Cuba. So if you like going out to little restaurants, there's a lot of New York pizza, and there's a lot of Cuban restaurants. So the cuisine in this city is good. The city has a lot of bars, cigar bars. It seems like everybody that moved here had the same idea. Get a cigar place or a restaurant downtown. So there's a lot of downtown restaurants. It's mostly like a flat downtown, kind of different from anything else in Florida or America, really, unless you head out west. It's really weird how downtown Cape Coral is just this flat landscape. Lots of restaurants, bars, live music. That's really the vibe in Cape Coral. And again, with a lot of Cubans and New Yorkers, it's a somewhat hip and happening place, despite the fact it feels suburban. Most places that are new like Cape Coral are really going to lack the culture, but Cape Coral, because of the people that are moving here from larger cities, they've built businesses accordingly. So despite the fact it has a suburban feel, it also has all of the good food, culture, bars, things to do. Overall, though, Cape Coral is a featureless city. It is nothing more than restaurants, roads, and houses. Crime in Cape Coral is very interesting. Overall, Cape Coral is a very safe city with very low homicide rate, but DUIs are a problem here. One of the most dangerous things about Cape Coral, if not the only thing dangerous about the city, is the amount of people involved in DUIs. There's a lot of bars, lots of places where people hang out. There's somewhat of a homeless problem here, people that are vagrant, but that's mostly towards North Fort Myers, not exactly within Cape Coral city limits. Just about the only thing there is to do in Cape Coral is go to bars. So you're going to see a lot of people like this guy here crashing their cars. DUIs are normal, and the police department kind of looks the other way because after all, there's nothing else to do. Hurricanes. Cape Coral has also had a target on its back for hurricanes. What upset a lot of people with Hurricane Ian is the fact that Cape Coral is the largest taxpayer base and one of the highest property taxes of anywhere in Southwest Florida. You would think that after Hurricane Ian they would be productive and they would see what they're paying for with their taxes, but it looked like cleanup efforts were kind of slow in Cape Coral, which might suggest somewhat of a corruption situation where you're paying all these taxes, but what are you really getting for it? Take a close look at taxes before buying in Cape Coral. Fort Myers, Florida, with 94,000 people, located in Lee County, Florida. This is a fast-growing area. A lot of people like the culture of the city of Fort Myers, and in particular, the downtown. There's nightclubs. There's just a vibe and environment in the city that people like. It's happening, it's hip, it's a place to be seen. It's more of a nightclub and partying vibe. downtown Fort Myers feels like South Beach, but it's a little bit more American than Hispanic in culture. It's a really neat place. You got a few bars, nightclubs. It's still elegant. It's still wealthy, but it also has more of a street feel, street appeal. People really like Fort Myers because of that. It's really more for young people that want to be in the vibe. You get the idea. Downtown Fort Myers is a popular place. And since Fort Myers Beach got destroyed by Hurricane Ian, a lot of the younger crowd shifted into downtown Fort Myers. So if you hang out here at night, there's always something going on. Unfortunately, some of the things that go on in downtown Fort Myers are things like shootings, stabbings. With that street life comes kind of a criminal element to downtown Fort Myers. So wrap it up early. Don't be out there too late. It does get crazy in downtown Fort Myers. But a lot of young people like that. They call it like a GTA vibe or a South Beach vibe. It's a very active place. There's always something going on. Thus, Fort Myers in general has a crime problem. Over the last few years, crime, homelessness, and just the wild street crap that goes on in Fort Myers has gotten completely out of control. It seems like there's no end to crime in this area. There's a huge illegal population. There's just a lot of addiction. There's homelessness. I mean, it's crazy. Fort Myers is completely out of control. So you get the street aspect, but then with that comes this other package. So Fort Myers is a place that, unfortunately, even their downtown's been on the news for all types of horrible crap. Yes, you get the culture. Yes, you get the vibe, but then you also get this huge influx of crime. The city of Fort Myers is starting to even get drawn up by gang territories now. Hurricane Ian absolutely destroyed the entire coast of Fort Myers. Thus, the beaches have been rendered useless. Probably there's contamination for another 100 years in this sterile bay. They're finding cars, boats, and even people out there in the Gulf. It's just a complete ecological disaster. Hurricane Ian destroyed the coastline, and it's led to somewhat more problems with affordability. Areas like North Fort Myers are known to be crime hotspots. It's a opioid epicenter in North Fort Myers. On a daily basis, you can catch people overdosing here. It's absolutely insane how much homelessness, crime, and overdoses you're going to see in the North Fort Myers area. It really is somewhat of a hurricane zombie land. You can't blame everything on the hurricane. This area has always been bad, but over the last few years, Fort Myers has really gone down the crap hole. Lehigh Acres. When you hear about growth in Fort Myers, the vast majority of it is happening in Lehigh Acres. Lehigh Acres is unincorporated, so if you live in Lehigh Acres, you're going to get a Fort Myers address. Currently, this area is pushing more than 70% Hispanic, and all of the growth in Fort Myers is really happening in Lehigh Acres. So when you hear about the Fort Myers area is growing, really it's Lehigh Acres is growing, but they want to blame it all and make it seem like it's Fort Myers. But Fort Myers Beach is kind of vacant and empty, and most of the construction now is pushing inland, which could be great for Lehigh Acres because now people are afraid of the coastline. Thus, Lehigh Acres being far inland and having a better elevation is a better place to build. Hopefully, Lehigh Acres gets more infrastructure in the future, since for now, all they've built out there is single-family home construction. The city of Fort Myers is in complete ruin in the meantime. Naples, Florida. The city has less than 20,000, but Collier County is well above 300,000 people. We saved the best for last. Downtown Naples is an enclave of wealth. As we said, only a small percentage of the city is actually within city limits, and that area includes downtown Naples. Is an absolutely exclusive area. Fifth Avenue South is the downtown of Naples, and it is one of the most elegant places and centers of concentrated wealth. Nothing in Florida even comes close to this. Maybe something like Palm Beach County could come close, but when you talk about wealth and money, Naples is the absolute pinnacle of it in Florida. Some of these houses in downtown Naples are pushing upwards of $80 million. Homicide rates in this county are about half the state average, making this one of the safest places to live in Florida. Safety, wealth, warm weather, tropical vibes has led to an incredible amount of growth in the Naples area. Predominantly very affluent people choose Naples as their homes. We're talking the owner of banks, CEOs, and other politicians. Very affluent people make Naples their home. It really is a place for the ultra wealthy. However, the ultra wealthy has also led to the ultra poor. And while Naples is known for its affluent communities, there is crime in the poor neighborhoods of Naples and Collier County. Overall, Naples is one of the safest cities in the United States, but when you enter neighborhoods like Naples Manor, Bayshore, Golden Gate City, the city of Immokalee, and other pockets of poverty, these are zip codes that are among the poorest in the entire state of Florida. So here you have the servants of the ultra wealthy just happen to be the poorest people in Florida. This ultra wealth has created ultra poverty, and while this is a side of Collier County you're probably never going to see, being poor in Naples is an absolute punishment. You would think with all the rich people that live in Naples that the poor people here will get some type of decent living conditions, but the poverty and misery in Naples is significant in poor neighborhoods, and it's because the rich people look at the rest of people in society as, well, something they could use, somebody they can exploit, not really human. Being poor in Collier County feels almost subhuman, and there's incredible poverty and misery in some parts of this county. It's just very well hidden, but it exists. Hurricanes are really a problem in Naples. Hurricane Ian brought a 9-foot storm surge and absolutely decimated everything along the coast of Naples. Luckily, most of the areas that were destroyed by Hurricane Ian are nothing more than second or third or fourth homes of the ultra wealthy, and these events actually provide a lot of income for the poor people that live in Collier County and cleanup efforts. So there's good and there's bad to hurricanes, and honestly, the rich people sometimes even enjoy being able to remodel their houses to the newest style. They're looking for an excuse to be able to do it, and the hurricane gives them a check to do it. So the fact that Naples was destroyed by a hurricane is almost insignificant. These people can definitely afford to rebuild, but the contamination and destruction that Naples saw will also be plaguing the area for a long time. The Naples Pier was absolutely destroyed by Hurricane Ian, and it's going to take a long time to rebuild it. Usually in Florida, we rebuild better and stronger, so in the long term, this will actually be somewhat of a blessing for Naples because it gives people an opportunity to rebuild better. But for now, the Naples Pier, the iconic symbol of Naples, is completely gone, but the contamination will be here for a long time. You saw stuff like this, like boats and stuff that ended up miles inland. There was a huge storm surge, but again, along the coast, you saw wealthy people. The average person can afford to live in the Golden Gate Estates, which is a rural area, mostly unincorporated areas of Collier County. There's a huge Cuban community out here as well. Inland Collier County is pushing about 40% Hispanic. These are beautiful suburban areas. You can get a 3-2 out here for about $500,000 new build on roughly about an acre. So the working class person can definitely afford to live in the Golden Gate Estates. And it's possibly one of the best places you can live in the United States because you're able to be in Naples but have access to kind of a rural feel as well. Great fishing out here, access to the Florida Everglades. Naples, Florida really is a great place to live. In the Golden Gate Estates, one of my favorite areas in general. They're starting to see more development here as well, but most of this is going to be single family home construction because it's plotted out for that. Remember that my lovely dear wife Catherine the Great is a realtor, so if you're reaching out for real estate purposes, you can talk to her. Now what she does is separate from what I do. I'm a YouTuber, she's a realtor, so what she does is completely separate from what I do. But if you're looking to get some real estate, call her and get a hold of her. But if you are really moving to Southwest Florida, Naples is the best your money can buy. We spent 20 years of our life down there in Naples. Beautiful beaches. What an incredible place to be able to grow up. And despite the fact it's growing and changing, Naples is still an incredible place to live. I've lived in Naples, Fort Myers, and Bradenton, so I'm very familiar with the entire scope of the cities we've talked about today. And I can tell you that Naples is absolutely the best money can buy, but it's fairly expensive. I like Bradenton where I'm at now because it's better for younger people. I'm closer to Tampa also, but there we go. That is everything you need to know about the larger cities in Southwest Florida. This video should be a wealth of knowledge to anybody moving to this area that wants to compare one city to the next to see what every city has to offer. On the upscale side, you have places like Naples and Sarasota, beautiful beaches. And if you're looking for affordability, Lehigh Acres in Northport, Southwest Florida, beaches, safety, and a lot of growth. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video.